My name is Sloane Bennett. I'm 27 years old, and last Sunday my parents told me to give up my bedroom, my home office, to my influencer sister. The pot roast smelled rich and sweet, the silverware glinted under the chandelier, and my mother's honeyed voice cut sharper than the knife in her hand. Be reasonable, Sloane, she said. Tara needs the space. My father's fist landed on the table. Either give it up or get out. I didn't cry. I smiled instead. But what they didn't know was, before I continue, tell me where you're watching from. And hit like and subscribe if you've ever been betrayed by family, if you've ever felt that twist in your chest when the people who should protect you choose someone else instead. Because this isn't just a story about losing a room. It's about taking your life back. I grew up in a house where love came in unequal portions, like mashed potatoes spooned heavier on one plate than another. Our home in Columbus always smelled of potpourri and lemon cleaner, but underneath it was something sour, something like envy left too long in the fridge. When I was 8, I learned the rule without anyone saying it out loud. Tara shines, Sloane supports. Mom would spend hours curling Tara's blonde hair for school pageants while I ironed Dad's shirts in the laundry room, the steam fogging my glasses. Once, I brought home a perfect score on a math test, clutching the paper like a golden ticket. Mom barely looked up from applying glitter eyeshadow on Tara. "That's nice, sweetheart," she said. Then she smiled at Tara's reflection in the mirror. "Hold still, baby. You're going to look perfect on stage." I stood behind them, invisible, watching my own reflection blur between their faces. At Thanksgiving, the year I turned 10, Dad carved the turkey and handed Tara the first slice. She giggled, and he said, "The star of the family eats first. Ladaside to me," shocked. I waited, knife and fork poised, pretending I didn't hear. I didn't know it then, but moments like that don't fade, they calcify, turning soft love into hard resentment that hides under your ribs for decades. By 14, I was working weekends at Henderson's Diner, refilling coffee for truck drivers, and counting tips by flashlight in my room. I saved $780 wrinkled bills I kept in a shoebox marked college fund. But what I wanted wasn't college, yet it was a laptop. I needed it for the online finance course I'd been sneaking through the public library's computer, the one that taught compound interest and risk management. I still remember the weight of that shoebox when I held it out to my mom, showing her the money I'd earned. She smiled, that same sweet smile that always meant trouble. "Your sister needs new video equipment," she said, almost apologetic. "The school is doing a media showcase. This could be her big break." Dad didn't even ask before he took the box from my hands. "This will help her future, Sloane. You'll understand someday." I understood immediately. My dreams were negotiable. Hers were investments. That night, I locked myself in the bathroom. The floor was cold against my knees, and the fan hummed like white noise, drowning my breath. I cried until my throat burned, then whispered into the sink, "Never again." I didn't know it back then, but that promise would become the foundation of everything I built. When Tara's video got a participation ribbon instead of a trophy, the whole family acted like it was the judge's fault. Mom baked her a cake that said, "Our star," and pink frosting. I washed the dishes. I always washed the dishes. At 17, I started doing small freelance jobs, online data entry, financial spreadsheets, organizing budgets for small Etsy shops. I'd stay up past midnight, blue light flickering against my walls. The same walls they'd someday demand for Tara's studio. I used a second-hand laptop an older student donated to me after hearing my story. Every keystroke felt like rebellion. When I left for college 2 years later, nobody came to drop me off. They were busy driving Tara to a regional modeling competition. I carried my duffel bag to the bus stop alone, a folded 20 in my pocket. I didn't cry then either, I just counted. Like always, $20, 3 notebooks, 1 chipped mug, 0 expectations. College wasn't glamorous. I lived on instant noodles and free Wi-Fi. But something inside me ignited. Numbers made sense when people didn't. While Tara's followers climbed into the thousands, I learned how to make money work quietly, efficiently, how to turn small balances into seed funds. I studied corporate tax codes like other girls studied fashion catalogs. By the time I graduated, I had 3 regular clients who trusted me to manage their savings. Every visit home was the same. Tara's framed photos on every wall. My accomplishments reduced to polite questions. "How's your little job thing going?" Dad would ask. between bites of roast beef. It's a company now, I'd say, but he'd already moved on. One Christmas, I gave Mom and Dad a framed photo of my first office space, a tiny downtown studio with 2 desks and a flickering fluorescent light. They thanked me and set it behind the couch, out of sight. Tara unwrapped a designer purse that same night. Mom clapped. See, hard work pays off. I bit my tongue until it bled. The irony was that my hard work actually did pay off, just not in the way they measured it. By 24, Bennett & Co. had grown enough to require a small team. Maya Brooks, my friend from college, and 2 remote analysts. We met at Oak and Ember Cafe every Thursday, sharing ideas over burnt espresso and half-melted muffins. The cafe smelled like ambition, caffeine, ink, and hope. It was the first place I ever felt seen. One night, Maya looked up from her laptop and said, "You ever gonna tell your family what you've built?" I shook my head. They wouldn't believe it. She laughed softly. Then one day, make them see it without saying a word. At the time, I thought she meant metaphorically. I didn't know she'd help me buy the house directly across the street from theirs years later. But before all that came the credit card discovery. At 25, while refinancing my business account, Priya Shah, my legal advisor, called me late one evening. "Did you know your name's attached to a credit line opened 10 years ago?" she asked. My stomach dropped. The card had been opened when I was 17. I remembered Dad signing forms for Tara's camera equipment around that time. He must have added me as an authorized user for better rates. That small act tanked my early credit score for years. Priya's voice was calm. "We can fix it quietly. Want me to file the dispute?" "Yes," I whispered, my pulse pounding. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't need their excuses anymore. By 26, I'd saved enough to consider property investment. Not to flaunt, just to build security. Maya joked that I had escape money. Maybe she was right. I started browsing listings in Columbus, mostly for curiosity. That's when I noticed it. A 2-story colonial across from my parents' home, its paint peeling but bones strong. A for sale sign swayed gently on the lawn. I bookmarked it, telling myself it was just for fun. But something in me already knew it wouldn't stay just a dream. The day my father's binder landed on the dining table, everything clicked into place. Years of quiet saving, silent dinners, ignored victories suddenly. They lined up like dominoes waiting for one touch. Mom's sweet voice, Tara's smirk, the pot roast, the ultimatum. They thought they were pushing me out. Really, they were giving me permission. I didn't shout. I didn't beg. That's not my style. Control was my language, and silence was my accent. As I rinsed my plate that night, I glanced through the kitchen window toward that house across the street. Its windows were dark, waiting. For the first time, I let myself imagine the lights turning on. Mine. The week after that ultimatum still plays in my head like a slow-motion replay. Each breath, each sound, each click of Mom's heels on the kitchen tile. But before it all exploded, the story really began with one small moment. Me, standing at the window of Oak and Ember Cafe, watching the snow fall over Columbus like dust over forgotten things. It was December, and the cafe heater hummed softly, filling the air with the smell of cinnamon syrup and burnt espresso. Maya was sitting across from me, typing at lightning speed. "You ever wonder what it'd feel like to stop surviving and just start living?" she asked. I laughed without humor. "Feels like a rich person's luxury." She tilted her head. "Or maybe it's just a decision." That conversation lingered in me longer than it should have. Because deep down, I knew she was right. I'd spent my entire life reacting to my family, explaining, adjusting, forgiving. What if I just didn't? 2 weeks later, Dana Whitmore, a real estate agent known for moving properties faster than gossip, sat across from me with her tablet. She slid an image toward me. 2-story colonial, across from Bennett residence. "This one?" she asked. I hesitated. "That's my parents' street." "Is that a deal breaker or a statement?" she said, arching a brow. It should have scared me that she could see right through me, but instead it grounded me. I said, "Show me the inside." The photos looked like memory déjà vu, the cracked banister, the same maples in the yard I used to climb. The kitchen tile even matched our families. Faded yellow squares like nicotine stains, but there was something else. A small office window facing directly toward my parents' living room. A mirror. An echo. A future vantage point. Still, I hesitated. Buying a house wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming control. But maybe, for once, both could coexist. I didn't tell anyone. Not Maya. Not even Priya. I just kept running my company, meeting clients, pretending to be fine while the decision fermented inside me. Then came the Sunday dinner that changed everything. The one before the Sunday, Tara was on her phone again, showing Mom new sponsorship messages. They want me to collab with Lustra Beauty, she bragged, swirling her wine glass like a pro. My fork froze midair. I knew Lustra, they were one of our potential clients. We were in talks to audit KOL data for their influencer partnerships. I said nothing, just chewed slowly. Dad looked proud, puffed up proud. Finally something paying off. Mom added softly, "It's because we believed in her, Richard." Then she turned to me. "You should try being more like your sister. Take risks, put yourself out there." "I'm doing fine," I said quietly. Tara smirked. "Sure, if by fine you mean invisible." The table laughed, except for Noah. He was 19 but already reading the subtext of every family dinner, like subtitles in a foreign language. Later that night, he knocked on my door. "You okay?" he asked, standing in the doorway with that hesitant, guilty look kids get when they've just realized their parents aren't perfect. "I'm fine," I said, packing folders into my briefcase. "They're being unfair," he muttered. "That's their native language," I said with a small smile. He half smiled back, then hesitated. "Mom told me not to tell you something." My hands froze. "What?" He looked down. "She said Tara's equipment is coming Wednesday, not Sunday. So that was the plan to force me out earlier." I took a slow breath. "Thank you, Noah." He lingered. "She also told Dad you wouldn't fight it. That you're adaptable." I laughed bitterly. "Yeah, that's what they call it when someone doesn't scream." That night, I didn't sleep. The radiator hissed softly, the only witness to my decision forming like frost on glass. By morning, I was in Dana's office, signing the offer letter. The seller was desperate to close quickly. I wired 60% down that same day. Dana looked impressed. "That's rare," she said. "I've been preparing for this my whole life," I replied. 3 days later, my offer was accepted. It was Wednesday, the same day Tara's equipment was scheduled to arrive. Fate had a sense of humor, apparently. While Mom was at the flower shop and Dad at work, I packed my essentials. Tax folders, external drives, the framed degree they'd never hung up, and my grandmother's pearl earrings. I left behind enough clutter to look like I was still there: old notebooks, a few sweaters, the illusion of compliance. Maya helped me move boxes into a rented van. "Are you sure you want to live across from them?" she asked, eyeing the street. "Absolutely," I said. "They've spent their whole lives pretending I don't exist. Now they'll have to see me every day." That night, as I placed the final box in my new living room, I noticed something strange: a faint envelope wedged behind the bookshelf. Inside was a single yellowed note, written in looping cursive. "Don't ask permission to exist." The signature, Mrs. L. Connors, my old 8th grade economics teacher, the one who told me, years ago, that understanding money meant understanding freedom. She had lived here once. My throat tightened. I pinned the note above my desk. For the next few days, I worked from my new office, unseen but watching. Through the window, I could see my family bustling inside my old house. Tara unpacking her equipment, Mom directing furniture placement, Dad drilling holes in the wall. They thought I was staying with Maya. Let them. On Friday evening, Priya called. "Sloane, Lustra Beauty's audit came back. Their metrics team found a red flag. One influencer's follower count doesn't match reported data." My pulse quickened. "And? Not your business to know. You recused yourself, remember?" I smiled faintly. "Right. Just so you know," she added, "you did the right thing stepping back. Integrity has a way of circling back." I didn't know it then, but that audit would destroy Tara's sponsorship a few weeks later. By Saturday night, the house across the street felt more like mine than any place I'd lived. I arranged my files, my books, my grandmother's pearls on the dresser. I practiced the conversation I knew was coming. No anger, no pleading, just truth. Sunday morning came bright and unseasonably warm. I dressed carefully: navy blazer, cream blouse, pearl earrings. The outfit was armor, not vanity. I brewed coffee and watched through my front window as my parents set the dining table across the street. Steam curled from my cup like smoke from a battlefield. I could have stayed quiet forever. But some moments in life demand a declaration, not for revenge, but for recognition. This was mine. As I gathered the leather folder deed papers, company statements, payroll sheets, I caught my reflection in the glass. For the first time, I didn't see the invisible daughter. I saw the woman who'd built something out of neglect and turned silence into power. I stepped outside. The air was crisp, the street eerily still. Each step toward that house felt lighter than the last. The same house where my dreams had been dismissed, where my name was used on debt, where my worth was measured against likes and followers. Now I was returning, not as the forgotten one, but as proof that being unseen doesn't mean being small. When I reached their door, I paused for one deep breath. Inside, I could hear laughter, Tara's high-pitched voice, Dad's deep chuckle, Mom's, "Oh honey" cadence. The smell of pot roast wafted through the air, familiar and nauseating. It was time. I knocked twice, and as the sound echoed through the hallway, I smiled, not because I forgave them yet, but because I finally knew what power felt like. Not loud, not cruel, just visible. When people talk about family tension, they usually mean arguments that cool after a night's sleep. Ours didn't cool, it fermented. By Monday morning, the air in the Bennett house felt carbonated, like one wrong word could make it explode. I had officially moved out, but they didn't know. From my new desk across the street, I could see my old bedroom window, now Tara's future studio. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same four walls where I once built an invisible empire, now being painted blush pink for an illusionist's career. Through the glass, I watched them drag boxes upstairs, Mom fluttering around with a roll of tape, Dad hauling tripods. At one point, Mom stood near the window, her phone pressed to her ear. Her smile was the same one she wore before every betrayal. "She's fine with it," I heard her say faintly through the cracked front door, her tone syrupy. "Sloane's adaptable. Always has been. Adaptable." The word burned worse than any insult. That night, I met Maya at Oak and Ember. She slid a cup of coffee toward me. "You look like a woman plotting world domination." I smiled without denying it. "I'm just preparing documentation." "For what?" "Visibility," I said. "They're about to see everything they chose to ignore." She raised her cup. "To finally being seen." We clinked, and the coffee tasted almost sweet. Tuesday morning, my phone buzzed with a text from Noah. "You might want to know they're throwing out boxes from your room." I grabbed my coat and walked out the door before I could second-guess it. The Bennett's driveway smelled of paint and new carpet glue. Inside, I found Mom stuffing a trash bag full of my old folders. "Hey." My voice came out sharper than I intended. She turned, feigning surprise. "Oh, sweetie, you startled me. I was just cleaning up." I pointed to the bag. "Those aren't trash." She laughed lightly. "You and your papers. You don't need these old things cluttering up space. Tara can actually use." "I'll take them." She tightened her grip on the bag. "You already said you'd be moving out." "It's fine. I'll handle it." "Mom, hand me the bag." Her smile froze, the sweetness curdling into disdain. "You always did make everything dramatic, Sloane." I took the bag anyway. My pulse roared in my ears as I dragged it down the hallway. Inside were tax statements, project drafts, client records, the foundation of my company. She would have tossed away my life's work because it didn't fit her aesthetic. As I reached the front door, Tara appeared at the top of the stairs, phone in hand. "God, are we doing this now?" She scoffed. "You're really overreacting." I looked up at her. "You wouldn't know the difference between overreacting and finally reacting." Her smirk faltered, just for a second. Later that day, Priya called from the office. "I reviewed your father's latest emails," she said carefully. "Did you know he's listed your address as his mailing address for his credit accounts?" I froze. "He used my business address?" "Yes. It's minor but not ethical." I pressed my fingers against my temple. "Clean it up quietly. No confrontation yet." Priya hesitated. "You could file a report." "Not yet. Let them dig their own hole first." That night, as I watched my parents' house from across the street, the windows glowed like a stage set. Tara's laughter floated across the lawn. I imagined her recording videos, preaching about authenticity, under the same ceiling where she stole mine. But anger didn't feel hot anymore. It felt cold, measured, useful. Wednesday, while they were at work, Dana stopped by with the closing papers for final signatures. We stood in the bright afternoon light of my new living room. "You're officially a homeowner," she said, smiling. I looked out the window at my parents' house. "More like a neighbor they didn't ask for." Dana chuckled. "I sell houses, Sloane. Not symbolism. But this one's poetic." That evening, Lustra Beauty's audit results hit the news cycle. The brand had paused a major sponsorship deal due to discrepancies in audience metrics. I didn't need to ask which influencer they meant. When I checked Tara's profile, her follower count had quietly dropped by several thousand. An hour later, my phone buzzed again, Noah's voice memo. I pressed play. Mom's voice came through, muffled but clear. "Don't tell your sister anything. She's so sensitive. It's better she stays in the dark." A beat. Then Dad. "She'll land on her feet. She always does." Then Tara, laughing. "Yeah, on her spreadsheets." I sat in silence, the sound fading but the meaning echoing. That was my family's language mockery disguised as affection. But I wasn't in the dark anymore. That night, I wrote a list on a sticky note. 1. Documents secured. 2. Ownership finalized. 3. Visibility ensured. Underneath, I added one more line. Sunday. Make them see. Thursday morning started deceptively calm. The street shimmered under a thin film of frost, and for once, the Bennett's house was quiet. But I knew the silence. It was the same one that came before a storm. Around noon, my phone buzzed. "Maya, you free?" Heard something wild. We met at Oak and Ember, the place that had seen the best and worst of my decisions. She slid into the booth, cheeks pink from the cold. "Your sister just posted a new vlog," she said. Title: Sacrifice and Family Support, My Secret to Success. I blinked once, twice. "You're kidding." "Wish I was." She turned her phone so I could see. There was Tara, framed in perfect lighting, my lighting, standing in my old room, now repainted pale pink. She gestured to the walls, smiling tearfully. "I'm so grateful my family believes in my dream," she said, "especially my parents, who gave me this space." No mention of me. Not even a thank you. Beneath the video, the comments glowed with praise. "You're so lucky to have supportive parents." Family goals. I scrolled, then closed the app. She doesn't even believe her own story anymore. Maya leaned forward. "You could expose her." I shook my head. "No, I'll let her expose herself." That evening, I walked past my parents' house. Through the kitchen window, Mom stood at the counter arranging flowers, humming softly. When she saw me, she froze, then smiled as if nothing had happened. "Sloane, you should stop by Sunday for dinner." "Dinner?" She nodded. "We have some news to share. And it's time we talked about family matters." I recognized that tone, the same syrup-sweet pitch before every ambush. "I'll be there," I said, because of course I would. Friday. Priya called again. "I went through the financial binder you sent. Sloane, there's more debt than you thought. Almost double." "How much?" "180,000 in personal cards, plus the second mortgage. They used part of it for Tara's brand coaching trip." I let out a slow breath. "And the house?" "Barely any equity left. They've been refinancing for years." My throat tightened, not from sympathy, but from disbelief at how far they'd gone to fuel a fantasy. "Thanks, Priya. Keep it documented." That night, I worked late, reviewing client portfolios, but my focus drifted to the window. Across the street, Tara's ring light glowed like an artificial moon. She paced in front of it, performing. Sometimes she'd stop and stare at her phone, frowning. Maybe the sponsorship fallout was hitting harder than she let on. Just past midnight, a soft knock echoed from my front door. When I opened it, Noah stood there, hoodie pulled tight, breath fogging in the cold. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Come in." He stepped inside, glancing around like he was seeing color for the first time. "This place, it's really yours?" I nodded. "Completely." He ran a hand along the newel post. "They don't know, do they?" "Not yet." He looked at me then, something like awe and guilt mixed together. "I heard Dad talking about a second mortgage today. They're freaking out because the sponsorship's on hold. Tara keeps pretending everything's fine." I studied him quietly. "And you?" "I'm tired of pretending." He took a breath. "When you show them, can I be there?" The question caught me off guard. "You sure you want to cross that line?" He nodded. "I think it's time someone did." Saturday afternoon, the neighborhood buzzed with rumors. Mrs. Lang, my mother's gossip partner, waved at me from her driveway. "Moving in, dear?" she called. I smiled faintly. "Already did." Her eyes widened, curiosity flickering like a match. The Whisper Network would take care of the rest. That evening, I sat at my new dining table, the one that used to be theirs. I'd bought it through the estate sale when the previous owner's family downsized. The wood was scuffed, edges dented, but solid. It felt poetic to reclaim a table that had once silenced me. I laid out the leather folder, the deed, the financial statements, my company's quarterly report, and, tucked neatly inside, the voice memo Noah had given me. Not to weaponize, but to remember, proof of pattern. Through the window, I saw Tara step outside to film a candid clip in the driveway, pretending to take a morning stroll. The camera never showed the real house, just the illusion behind her smile. Tomorrow, that illusion would break. I rehearsed what I'd say once more in my head. No rage, no raised voice, just the truth, delivered like a fact sheet. Across the street, the Bennett's lights dimmed one by one. The neighborhood settled into silence, unaware that the quietest person on the block was about to change everything. When I finally went to bed, I placed the pearl earrings on the nightstand beside me. They caught the faint streetlight and glimmered softly, a reminder of legacy, but this time on my terms. Tomorrow was Sunday. Sunday morning arrived, bright and cold. The kind of morning that feels deceptively peaceful, like the world holds its breath before something irreversible. I woke early. The house was quiet except for the faint creak of old wood under my feet. I brewed a pot of black coffee, the smell sharp and grounding, and laid the leather folder on the counter. Inside it was everything they'd refused to see: the deed to this house, payroll statements, client contracts, tax forms with my name, only my name on every line. I dressed carefully, each motion deliberate: navy blazer, cream blouse, pearl earrings. The outfit felt like armor. By the time I buttoned the last sleeve, the nervous energy inside me had turned to steel. Across the street, through the morning haze, I saw movement in my parents' kitchen. Mom was setting the table, Dad flipping through the Sunday paper like nothing in the world was about to change. Tara's car was already in the driveway. Noah's bike leaned against the porch rail. Perfect attendance. I poured my coffee into a travel mug, slipped the folder under my arm, and stepped outside. The air bit at my lungs crisp, electric. My heels clicked against the sidewalk like a metronome counting down to impact. When I reached their porch, I hesitated only long enough to take one last deep breath. Then I knocked twice. Mom opened the door, surprise flickering across her face. "Sloane, we weren't expecting you so early." Her eyes darted behind me, scanning for a car that wasn't there. I walked. I said evenly, "Can I come in?" She stepped aside, her smile stiff. "Of course, honey." We were just about to sit down. The smell of pot roast hit me as I entered, the same scent that had haunted my childhood. Dad looked up from his newspaper. "Well, look who decided to join us." Tara sat at the table, phone in hand, pretending disinterest but watching me in the reflection of her screen. Only Noah gave a small, real smile. "Morning, Sloane." "Morning," I replied, meeting his eyes just long enough for him to know I saw him. I set my coffee down and took my old seat at the table, the one that used to be mine before I stopped belonging. Tara cleared her throat dramatically. "I was just telling Mom and Dad about my brand recovery plan. I'm already pitching to new sponsors. People love a comeback story." Dad chuckled. "That's the spirit. You'll bounce back in no time." Mom nodded proudly, her hand brushing Tara's shoulder. "You've always had resilience, sweetheart." Then, turning to me, "Sloane, you could learn from your sister. She never gives up." I let the silence stretch. Then I smiled slightly. "You're right. She doesn't." Tara's lips twitched. "What's that supposed to mean?" "Nothing," I said, sipping my coffee. "I just admire how you keep going no matter how fake things get." Her eyes narrowed. "Excuse me?" Dad folded the paper, voice sharp. "All right, enough. You two don't need to start." "Who's starting?" I asked. "I'm just here for breakfast." The tension rippled like static. Mom reached for the pot roast, desperate for normalcy. "Let's just eat. We're all family here." I leaned back in my chair. "Are we?" That stopped her. The room went still. I placed the leather folder on the table, the sound heavier than it should have been. Dad frowned. "What's this?" "Documentation," I said. "You've always liked proof, Dad." Tara scoffed. "Oh my God. Are you suing us or something?" No, I said calmly. Just clarifying things. I opened the folder slowly, letting the pages fan out the deed. Financial records, tax forms, and at the top, my company's logo. Bennett & Co. Financial Consulting. I moved out Wednesday, I said, voice steady. Bought a house. The one across the street. For a heartbeat. No one spoke. Then Mom's teacup clinked against its saucer. Across the street? Dad blinked. You bought what? The house across from this one, I said, nodding toward the window. You can see it from here. Go ahead. Their heads turned in unison. Through the window, sunlight hit my house at just the right angle, glinting off the brass door handle and the welcome home sign Dana had insisted I hang. Tara's phone slipped from her hand, clattering onto her plate. Dad's mouth opened, then shut again. Mom's lips trembled into a brittle smile. That must have been expensive. 60% down, I replied. Business has been good. You, Dad stammered. You run a business? I own one. I slid a statement across the table: last quarter's revenue. Neat columns of numbers totaling $2.7 million. He stared like the paper was written in another language. Mom found her voice first. That's impressive, sweetheart. Really, it is. But don't you think buying that house was well impulsive? Impulsive? I tilted my head. I've been preparing for years. You just weren't looking. Tara's voice cracked through the silence. You're lying. There's no way you can afford that. I met her eyes. Believe whatever you need to, Tara. You always do. Noah stood quietly at the end of the table, hands shoved in his pockets. She's not lying. All heads turned. He stepped forward, voice firm. She's been building her business since college. You just never cared enough to ask. Mom's jaw tightened. Noah, that's enough. But he didn't stop. I heard you, Mom. On the recording. Her face drained of color. What recording? The one where you said to keep Sloane in the dark because she's too sensitive. The words landed like a slap. Dad's eyes darted to me. You recorded us? I shook my head. No. He did. And I didn't plan to use it. But maybe it's time you heard yourselves. For the first time, no one spoke over me. Even Tara sat frozen, lips parted but silent. I gathered the folder, sliding the papers back inside. I'm not here for revenge, I said quietly. Just recognition. You wanted me to give up my room, and I did. I just found a bigger one. I stood. Mom rose too, her voice soft, desperate. Sloane, wait. We didn't mean. You did. I interrupted. And that's okay. You don't have to see me. Just know that I'm here. And I'm not leaving this time. For a long moment, the only sound was the clock ticking on the wall. Then Noah moved first, stepping to my side. I'll walk you out. We crossed the living room in silence. The others still frozen behind us. Outside, the cold sunlight hit my face. Across the street, my house waited, windows gleaming like open eyes. Halfway down the walkway, I turned back once. Through the window, I saw Mom sink into a chair, Dad staring at his trembling hands, Tara scrolling furiously on her phone, searching for validation that wouldn't come. Noah glanced at me. You okay? I smiled faintly. Better than okay. He followed my gaze to my house. It's beautiful. Yeah, I said. It is. We stood there a moment longer, the two of us in the crisp winter air, before I whispered, for the first time, I can finally breathe. Then I crossed the street home. That night, the neighborhood glowed with the soft pulse of porch lights and TV screens. From my office window, I could see my parents' house, its curtains drawn tight, the way people do when they're hiding more than just what's inside. I sat at my desk, sipping tea instead of wine. The leather folder now rested in my drawer, closed but not forgotten. Proof wasn't something I needed to wave around anymore. It had already done its work. At 9:14 p.m., my phone buzzed with a message from Priya. For your information, Lustra Beauty just announced a suspension of one influencer partnership. Compliance found fake metrics. Guess who? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The universe had a way of balancing its own ledgers. A few minutes later, another text popped up from Noah. They're arguing downstairs. Tara's blaming Mom for everything. Dad's talking about refinancing again. It's bad. My fingers hovered over the screen. Then I typed back. It's not your job to fix it. He replied. I know. Just thought you'd want to know. Proud of you, by the way. I set the phone down, a small smile tugging at my lips. Pride it wasn't something we said easily in that family. But hearing it from him felt like a door cracking open. Just a little. Across the street, movement caught my eye. A delivery van pulled up to my porch. A man stepped out, carrying a tall arrangement of white orchids and a glossy envelope. He rang once, then left the package by the door. I brought it inside. The note read, "Congratulations, Sloane Bennett, to building your own foundation, the Lustre Compliance Team." A clean, corporate message. But the timing? Perfect. Visible, poetic. Through my window, I saw Mom watching from her kitchen, her face pale behind the glass. She turned away when our eyes met. I placed the flowers on the table, the same table that used to be theirs, and whispered, "Family supports family, right?" The words tasted different now, less like bitterness, more like freedom. I turned off the lights, leaving only one lamp glowing by the window. Enough illumination for them to see I wasn't gone. Just repositioned. They thought taking my room would make me disappear. Instead, they handed me the view. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, you know how it feels to shrink yourself just to keep the peace. But sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do isn't to shout, it's to step back and let your success speak louder than their silence. So tell me, where are you watching from? And if you've ever rebuilt yourself from the ground up after being dismissed, hit like, leave a comment, and subscribe. Because stories like this, stories of quiet revenge, earned peace, and finally being seen, they're just getting started.